Today is September 11th, 2016, and it's 15 years later from when the towers were hit and that awful terrorist attack that we had.
So today, rather than doing a kind of a fun video like we've normally done, we want to kind of just sit here and talk about where we were when the planes hit the World Trade Center. And
So I was 15 years old when the towers were hit, and I was on my way to English class, and I didn't really understand what was happening quite yet. And so I was in my class, and I kind of heard a little bit about what was going on. It didn't really hit me until I went to second period to seminary class. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a religious class you can have at school. I was there, and the teacher turned on the TV, and I saw that the buildings had been hit and they were on fire, and I just thought, whoa, what is happening? I don't get it. I don't get what's just happened. This has never happened before in my lifetime. I think I've been really, privileged to not have seen a bunch of chaos and terrorism until I was 15. It didn't even make sense to me, since I had never seen this before. How could somebody do this? And so throughout the day, everybody was just really somber, and we got to the auditorium where we had choir that day, and instead of having choir, we had the big screen projection of what had just happened, and showed everybody the chaos of people running down the street. The buildings, the towers had collapsed, and people that looked like they had been jumping out of the buildings from when it had been hit, and just imagining everything that had just happened, and them saying on the news how many people had been killed already, and the numbers just kept climbing up. I didn't understand how this could happen. I just couldn't understand it, and I was so sad. That night, I had talked to my best friend on the phone, and I just had said, this is just going to keep happening. If this has happened now, how could this happen? And I was just terrified. I was scared. And I remember that the TV was just silent for a long time. It was just the news. There was nothing else on but the news, and thinking how terrifying of an experience this had happened. This was just scary. And then I found out that a neighbor of mine had been on the first plane that was hit, that hit the World Trade Center. It was the first plane that hit. I didn't know her, but I knew her granddaughter, and they live nearby. Her granddaughter is my age, and I went to school with her since I was elementary school. And so her grandmother and her aunt were on the plane, the first plane that hit. So she lost both of them that day. And knowing that somebody in our town had been on a plane that had hit the World Trade Center just was devastating. And I felt awful for that family. And I remember a couple days later at school, I saw her walking outside with her books, and I think could have been the vice principal or somebody was walking with her I think her mom was with her, just leading her around the school to get her stuff, and so she could go home and I assume be away for a little bit. And I just remember seeing her face and how sad she looked, and it just broke my heart that she had lost some of her family. And just imagining everyone in her family, how they were feeling. And it doesn't, terrorism can happen anywhere, and it can happen to somebody that lives right by you. Everyone can be affected some way or another by it. And I'm just grateful for my freedoms and that what I have, and I will never forget September 11th. And every time it rolls around, I always think about it. Whenever I see the clock say 9/11, I think of September 11th. And I just wanted to share my story about how I feel about that, and that I still feel very sad and will always feel sad because it's left a mark in my life forever, and I think of those families and all those lives that were lost.
So Melinda and I switched off just because we had to watch the baby. But I was in Brazil when everything went down. I remember I was serving as a Mormon missionary at the time for 2 years, down 2001. And I was just at a meeting, and then we broke for lunch, and me and a group of missionaries were going, and all these people were just yelling at us. And it was just saying, "Hey, missionaries, did you see? Americanos, did you see?" And all this stuff. We're like, what is going on? And so as we're walking in, one of the Brazilian missionaries came up to me. He's like, "Dude, did you just hear? Some planes just ran into some buildings over in New York." I'm like, "What?" And then I didn't know what to think about it, so I went and I ordered my food, but then they're just like, "Another plane hit another building. Did you hear?" And I'm just like, and so I wasn't watching the TV or anything in the restaurant because I had my, mission blinders on at the time, and a lot of people started talking, some people coming up to us and saying a few things, and then one missionary thought it was this joke, and so he started saying, "Yeah, and I also heard that two missionaries were killed in Israel, because a lot of people believe that, some prophets are gonna die in Israel and gonna be raised up, and it's second coming." So a bunch of missionaries were talking about that too. So long story short, that night a family I was teaching went into their house, and they had the TV on, and they opened the door and they're like, "Really sorry to hear about your country." And I'm like, "Well, what exactly went on?" And we went in and just watching the TV, and I just remember being in shock and being in awe. And I grabbed the newspaper the next day, and this says, "Terror in the Heart of America." And I held on to it ever since. You got some shots of George Bush and a few other things that talks about everything. It says Bush promises to punish the people, the criminals, I guess. Criminosis, I think that's what it is. And and the next few days after that, Brazilians, you'll meet a ton of great Brazilians out there. Everyone that I know is pretty cool, but there are some that really don't like the United States. And, people in the United States don't really like some people too, but I got, "Oh, so sorry," or, some people saying like they were happy this happened, and Americans are just full of themselves and everything. And I was teaching English classes at the time, and I had one of the students come back from New York, and he gave me the Time magazine so I could read it. So I read through that, and so that was the Time magazine in October, printed right after that. And he also grabbed me Newsweek, so that was pretty cool. I'll have to go through and read those again, but it's good to remember those people and to never forget. Well, thanks for listening to our stories. Let us know about your stories in the comments if you want. It'd be nice to hear something.
We'd love to hear from you, so just let us know. We'd love to hear your stories.
We'll talk next week. Thank you.